The cold was biting, relentless, seeping through the fractured hull of the exploration vessel. Kira pulled her furry companion closer, burying her face in Fluff's soft blue coat. The small creature, part feline, part ursine according to Lyrian taxonomy, purred weakly, the vibration providing what little comfort remained in their rapidly cooling shelter. Outside, Frostpoint's merciless winds howled across the ice desert, carrying crystalline particles that pinged against the wrecked ship's exterior like miniature bullets. "We had a good run, didn't we?" Kira whispered, her breath materializing in clouds before her violet eyes. Her silver-flecked skin, normally radiant under her home planet's twin suns, had dulled to a sickly gray. The emergency power cells had failed hours ago, and the backup thermal system followed shortly after. Now, as the interior temperature plummeted toward the planet's ambient -70 degrees, all she could do was hold Fluff and wait for the inevitable. The crash had been sudden. A miscalculation in the gravitational pull of Frostpoint's unusual triple moon system had sent her lightweight survey craft spiraling toward the uninhabited planet. Her distress beacon had deployed automatically, but in this remote sector, the chances of another vessel intercepting the signal were astronomically small. Kira was a seasoned space explorer from Lyrian, sent to map uncharted regions beyond the Cygnus Arm. She had survived harsh conditions before: volcanic eruptions on Pyrex 6, toxic gas clouds on Methys, even a brief captivity by the nomadic Tralhian. But this was different. The cold was absolute. Final. "Just sleep," she murmured to Fluff, whose four-legged body trembled despite the thick fur. "It won't hurt. We'll just drift away together." Kira closed her eyes, feeling the creeping numbness in her extremities. The ship's cracked view screen offered one last glimpse of Frostpoint's hauntingly beautiful landscape. Endless plains of blue-white ice reflecting the pale light of the three moons hanging low in the alien sky. The sound came first, a mechanical whirring, growing steadily louder. Kira dismissed it as hallucination, a product of her oxygen-deprived brain. Then came the impact, something heavy landing on the ship's exterior. Metal against metal. Deliberate. Fluff's ears perked up, his azure eyes suddenly alert. The creature wiggled out of Kira's weakened grasp, pawing at the sealed emergency hatch. "What is it?" Kira's voice was barely audible, her throat constricted by cold and dehydration. The answer came in a shower of sparks as something, or someone, began cutting through the side of the hull. A perfect circle of metal fell inward, clattering against the deck plates. Wind and ice rushed in, but also light, artificial directed. A figure appeared in the opening, bulky and formidable in an environmental suit, the visor obscuring any facial features. Kira's translator had long since powered down, leaving her only with her native Lyrian language. "Help," she managed weakly, the melodic tones of her species barely recognizable through chattering teeth. The figure stepped forward, movements deliberate in the heavy protective gear. A gloved hand reached toward her, hesitating only briefly at the sight of her clearly non-human features. Then, with decisive action, the rescuer unclipped a portable heating unit from their belt and activated it. Blessed warmth flooded the small compartment. Through the fog of near death, Kira registered being lifted, Fluff tucked securely against her. The stranger carried them both through the jagged opening and into what appeared to be another vessel. Small, utilitarian, but gloriously warm. Only when they were secured in the cabin of this rescue craft did the figure remove their helmet, revealing the face of a human male, weathered, with deep-set eyes and a scar running along his jawline. He spoke, the sounds unfamiliar to Kira's ears, but his intentions clear through his actions as he wrapped thermal blankets around her and Fluff. It was the first time Kira had ever encountered a human up close. Her species had documented them from afar, a relatively young, spacefaring race, aggressive in their expansion, but technologically less advanced than Lyrians. This one, however, seemed different from the military types usually described in Lyrian intelligence reports. As consciousness began to fade again, this time into the welcome relief of healing sleep rather than frozen death. Kira's last thought was of the improbability of it all. On an uninhabited ice planet, in an unmapped sector, the paths of two different species had crossed at precisely the right moment. The universe, it seemed, had other plans for Kira of Lyrian. When Kira awoke, it was to the sensation of movement, a steady vibration beneath her body indicating transport. She was lying on a padded surface, thermal blankets piled around her, and fluff curled at her feet, breathing steadily. Her extremities tingled painfully as circulation returned, but the crushing cold was gone. The human sat at the controls of the small craft, navigating through Frostpoint's turbulent atmosphere. Sensing her consciousness, he glanced back, speaking again in his incomprehensible language. His expression, however, was universal enough, concern mixed with curiosity. Kira attempted to sit up, wincing as her stiff muscles protested. "Thank you," she said in Lyrian, knowing he wouldn't understand, but needing to express the sentiment anyway. The human smiled slightly, tapping his chest. "Jack," he said clearly, before returning his attention to the controls. "Jack," Kira repeated, testing the simple name on her tongue. She mirrored his gesture, touching her own chest. "Kira." He nodded, apparently pleased by this basic communication. Through the craft's viewport, Kira could see they were approaching a structure on the planet's surface, a prefabricated emergency shelter typical of human forward operating bases. It was small, essentially a reinforced bubble designed to withstand extreme environments, but to Kira, it represented safety. Jack landed the craft with practiced ease, then helped Kira to her feet. Her silver-blue jumpsuit, standard issue for Lyrian explorers, was torn and frost-damaged in places, but its self-repairing fibers were already beginning to mend. Standing was difficult, her body still recovering from near-fatal hypothermia. Jack supported her weight easily, guiding her from the craft into the shelter, Fluff trotting cautiously behind them. Inside, the emergency base was sparse, but functional. A sleeping area, food preparation unit, communications console, and environmental controls. The temperature was set to what Kira assumed was human comfort level, warmer than Lyrian preference, but not unpleasantly so. Jack gestured for her to sit on one of the padded benches, then moved to the food unit. After some consideration, he selected several containers, opening each for her inspection. Kira studied the offerings carefully. Her species could digest most carbon-based nutrients, but certain Earth compounds were toxic to Lyrian biology. She pointed to something that resembled the protein paste used on her own exploration vessels. As they ate, Fluff happily accepting a protein cube, Kira observed her rescuer more closely. Jack wore the uniform of a human military scout, though with personalizations that suggested he'd been deployed independently for some time. His movements were efficient, disciplined, yet there was a gentleness in how he'd handled both her and Fluff. Not the behavior she would have expected from a human soldier, based on Lyrian intelligence briefings. Communication was their immediate challenge. Jack retrieved a tablet device and activated a drawing program. With simple sketches, he conveyed that he was stationed on Frost Point as a forward observer, monitoring activity in this sector for Earth's military alliance. He detected her crash and responded on his own initiative. Kira used the same method to explain her survey mission and the gravitational anomaly that had downed her craft. Jack's brow furrowed when she drew the symbol of the Lyrian Exploration Guild. Clearly, he recognized her species, though perhaps only from briefings or reports. Their rudimentary exchange was interrupted by an alarm from the shelter's environmental system. Jack moved quickly to the control panel, his expression shifting to concern. He showed Kira a weather monitoring display. A massive storm system was approaching, one that would engulf their location within hours. Through more drawings, Jack explained the situation. The emergency shelter wasn't designed to withstand a storm of that magnitude. They would need to travel to a more substantial installation approximately 20 kilometers across the ice. Kira glanced at Fluff, who had curled up contentedly near a heating vent. She drew a simple map, adding a question mark. Jack nodded grimly. They had no choice. As they prepared for the journey, Kira accessed the remains of her exploration pack, retrieving a few crucial tools and her personal recorder. Jack outfitted her with a human environmental suit modified as best he could for her slightly taller, more slender frame. It was an odd sensation, wearing the technology of another species, but Kira appreciated both the necessity and the gesture. Fluff, ever adaptable, allowed himself to be secured in a carrying pack that Jack had ingeniously modified with heating elements. The creature's natural fur already provided substantial insulation, but the additional warmth would ensure his safety during the trek. Before they departed, Jack attempted to send a message through the base's communication system, but the approaching storm was already interfering with transmissions. He shrugged, making a later gesture that Kira understood perfectly. Whatever authorities Jack reported would have to wait. They set out across Frost Point's barren landscape, the wind already strengthening around them. Jack led the way, occasionally checking a wrist-mounted navigation device. The three moons cast overlapping shadows across the ice fields, creating an eerie, shifting landscape of light and darkness. In other circumstances, Kira would have found it breathtaking, the kind of unique planetary phenomenon she had joined the Exploration Guild to document. Halfway to their destination, the storm hit with full force, visibility dropping to near zero as ice particles blasted horizontally across the plain. Jack extended a tether between their suits, a lifeline connecting them in the wideout. Kira felt Fluff squirming in his carrier, sensing the creature's anxiety even through the pack's insulation. Without warning, the ice beneath them shifted, a low rumble that Kira felt through her boots. Jack pulled her back just as a fissure opened where she had been standing. Through the swirling snow, a massive shape emerged, easily 4 times Kira's height, with multiple limbs and an elongated head featuring sensory appendages that twitched in their direction. An ice predator, perfectly adapted to Frost Point's harsh environment and clearly attracted by their movement. In all the Guild's preliminary surveys of the planet, no such creature had ever been documented. Jack unholstered a compact energy weapon, pushing Kira behind him. The creature advanced, its translucent body almost invisible in the storm except where its internal organs pulsed with bioluminescence. It struck with frightening speed, one limb sweeping toward them like a whip. Jack fired, the energy pulse temporarily disorienting the creature. He grabbed Kira's arm, pulling her into a run across the treacherous terrain. The predator recovered quickly, pursuing with surprising agility for its size. Kira stumbled, nearly falling as the ice buckled beneath her feet, but Jack's grip remained firm. Ahead, through momentary breaks in the storm, Kira glimpsed their destination, a larger installation partially embedded in an ice ridge for stability. Jack's pace increased, urging her forward as the creature closed the distance behind them. At the installation's reinforced door, Jack frantically input an access code. The seconds stretched eternally as the creature reared up, preparing for a final lunge. Just as the door began to slide open, one of the predator's limbs wrapped around Kira's ankle, yanking her backward. In a flash of movement, Fluff burst from his carrier, leaping at the creature with unexpected ferocity. His claws, evolved for climbing Lyrian's crystal forests, slashed at the predator's sensory appendages. The creature recoiled, momentarily confused by this small, furious attacker. It was all the time Jack needed. He pulled Kira through the doorway, reaching out to snatch Fluff in midair as the small defender retreated. The door sealed shut behind them, the creature's frustrated howl muffled by meters of reinforced material. Inside, they collapsed against the wall, breathing heavily. Jack's eyes met Kira's, and despite the absence of a common language, something passed between them, the shared experience of facing death together, of mutual protection. He reached out hesitantly, touching her arm in what seemed to be an expression of relief or perhaps admiration. Kira smiled, the Lyrian expression similar enough to be recognized. "You saved me twice now," she said in her language. Then, with careful pronunciation of the unfamiliar human word, "Thank you." Jack's answering smile told her he understood the sentiment. if not the words. The larger installation offered considerably more comfort than the emergency shelter, separate sleeping quarters, a proper food synthesis unit, and most importantly to Kira, a technical workshop. The facility appeared to be a forward research station, established to study Frostpoint's unusual properties before the main human colonization efforts. After they had recovered from their harrowing journey, Jack showed Kira around the complex. The tour ended at the communication center, where Jack attempted to establish contact with his military command. The storm, however, continued to block all outgoing signals. His frustrated expression suggested this wasn't entirely unexpected. That evening, as they shared a meal, Jack having identified several synthesizer settings that produced food compatible with Lyrian physiology, Kira noticed a slight vibration in the floor beneath them. Jack felt it too, his head tilting in the universal gesture of listening. He rose quickly, moving to an environmental control panel. His expression darkened as he studied the readings. Through a series of drawings and pantomime, he conveyed the problem, a coolant leak in the station's power core. Left unchecked, it would eventually contaminate the air supply. Kira followed him to the maintenance section, where the issue became immediately apparent even without shared language. The stabilizing mechanism for the power core had been damaged, likely by the same storm that had interfered with her survey craft systems. The leak was slow but steady, the specialized coolant forming crystals where it contacted the sub-zero air filtering in through the damaged section. Jack began gathering repair tools, but hesitated when Kira gestured for him to step aside. Her Lyrian engineering training was specifically geared toward adapting to unfamiliar technology. She studied the system briefly, noting where human engineering principles paralleled or diverged from those of her people. With careful movements, Kira disassembled the damaged component, using her slender fingers to access spaces too narrow for Jack's broader human hands. She identified the fracture in the coolant containment vessel and, using a combination of Jack's tools and components from her own survival kit, implemented a fusion seal that would hold indefinitely. Jack watched with undisguised admiration as she reassembled the unit, the leak contained and the system stabilized. When she finished, he offered a formal bow, a gesture that transcended their communication barrier. Kira recognized it from Lyrian historical records of early human-alien encounters, respect between equals. That night, unable to sleep, Kira found herself in the station's observation dome, watching Frostpoint's 3 moons create complex patterns of light across the now calming storm. Jack joined her silently, carrying 2 containers of a steaming beverage. He offered one to her, demonstrating how to sip the warm liquid. It was pleasant, slightly bitter, but with undertones of sweetness that reminded her of Lyrian night bloom nectar. They sat together, watching the alien sky, occasionally exchanging glances that increasingly contained something beyond mere curiosity or gratitude. In the quiet of that moment, Kira realized the communication barrier between them had begun to fall away. They had developed a rudimentary sign language of their own, supplemented by drawings and expressions. More than that, they had formed a connection through shared danger and mutual respect, a foundation stronger than words. Jack took out his tablet, drawing something new. Not practical information about the station or their situation, but a simple scene of 2 figures clearly meant to represent them, standing together beneath multiple moons. It was art, not communication, an expression of their shared experience. Kira responded by retrieving her personal recorder, activating its holographic display to show Jack images of her homeworld. The crystalline forests of Lyrian, the graceful spiral architecture of her city, the ceremonies of the Exploration Guild. Jack watched, enraptured, occasionally reaching toward a particularly beautiful image as if he could touch it. In turn, he showed her photographs stored on his tablet. Earth landscapes ranging from oceans to mountains, the sprawling human colonies on Mars, his family gathered in what appeared to be a celebration. Through these images, they learned more about each other than any translator could have conveyed. As the night progressed, the storm outside finally broke, revealing Frostpoint's star-filled sky in all its glory. Jack pointed upward, then to himself, then made a sleeping gesture, indicating he needed rest before tomorrow's tasks. Kira nodded, watching as he departed for his quarters, turning once at the doorway to offer a final glance that lingered perhaps a moment longer than necessary. Alone in the observation dome, Kira held Fluff close, the creature purring contentedly against her chest. "What do you think?" she whispered in Lyrian. "He's nothing like what the guild briefings described, is he?" Fluff chirped softly, kneading her arm with gentle paws. "You're right," she continued, scratching behind his ears. "We shouldn't generalize about an entire species based on official reports. There's so much more to learn." That night, Kira dreamed not of home, but of new horizons, unexplored and unexpected. Days passed in the research station, falling into a rhythm of shared meals, collaborative maintenance tasks, and increasingly sophisticated communication. Jack had discovered a basic language program in the station's database, designed for first contact scenarios. While far from perfect, it allowed them to exchange simple phrases and concepts beyond what their improvised sign language could convey. Kira learned that Jack was a scout for Earth's planetary expansion initiative, not strictly military as she'd first assumed, but a hybrid organization that combined security, research, and colonial preparation. He had been stationed on Frost Point for 6 months, investigating its suitability for a potential human outpost. His mission, like hers, was one of exploration rather than conquest. In turn, she explained that Lyrians had been aware of humans for decades, but had maintained a policy of non-interference, observing Earth's development from afar. Her own mission had not targeted Frost Point specifically. She was conducting a broad survey of previously unmapped regions when the gravitational anomaly had disrupted her course. The storm had finally cleared, but a new problem had emerged. The research station's communication array, while operational, lacked sufficient power to reach either Jack's command or Kira's guild with their current energy reserves. They would need to repair her crashed vessel's power cells and integrate them with the station's systems to boost the signal. This project brought them into even closer collaboration, their different technological backgrounds proving complementary rather than contradictory. Jack's practical approach to problem-solving paired well with Kira's theoretical expertise. They worked side by side in the station's workshop, Fluff watching curiously from a perch he'd claimed atop a storage unit. It was during these hours of shared work that Kira began to notice subtle changes in her own behavior, finding reasons to stand closer to Jack than strictly necessary, becoming acutely aware of the moments their hands brushed while exchanging tools. More surprisingly, she detected similar patterns in him, his gaze lingering when he thought she wouldn't notice, deliberately choosing tasks that kept him near her. These feelings were unexpected, unprecedented in Lyrian records of cross-species interactions. Yet they felt genuine, evolving naturally from their shared circumstances and growing understanding. One evening, as they tested a newly modified power coupling, the system surged unexpectedly. Jack reacted instantly, pushing Kira away from the electrical arc. The movement was protective but resulted in them stumbling backward together, Jack's arms encircling her as they fell against the workshop wall. For a moment, neither moved. Jack's hands remained at her waist, his face close enough that Kira could feel his breath against her skin. His eyes searched hers, questioning, uncertain. Instinctively, she raised her hand to his face, fingers tracing the scar along his jawline, a gesture of intimacy that transcended their biological differences. The moment broke when the power systems stabilized with a loud hum, the machinery around them returning to normal operation. They separated slowly, Jack clearing his throat and returning to the task with deliberate focus. But something fundamental had shifted between them, a boundary crossed, however briefly. That night, the repaired communication array powered up successfully, strong enough to penetrate Frost Point's atmospheric interference. Jack's military protocols required him to report first, and Kira waited anxiously as he established contact with his command center. Even without understanding the language, she recognized the shift in Jack's demeanor as he spoke with his superiors, the return of military formality, the careful neutrality in his expressions. He glanced at her several times during the exchange, his eyes communicating what his words could not: concern. When the transmission ended, Jack used their improvised communication methods to explain the situation. His command had ordered him to secure the unidentified extraterrestrial entity, her, and await extraction by a military vessel already en route to Frost Point for his scheduled rotation. The terms he communicated were clinical, bureaucratic. She was to be contained, studied, processed through the appropriate security protocols. Standard procedure for unplanned first contact scenarios, especially those involving advanced technology like her damaged survey craft. Kira understood the logic from a strategic perspective. Her own guild had similar protocols for encountering unknown species. But the reality of being treated as a specimen rather than a person, after everything they had shared, struck her with unexpected force. Jack's expression suggested he felt the conflict too, duty versus the connection they had formed. He showed her the projected arrival time of the extraction vessel, less than 20 standard hours away. That evening, they sat together in silence, the weight of the impending separation hanging between them. Fluff sensed the tension, moving restlessly between them before finally settling in the space where their hands nearly touched on the observation room bench. "I don't want to go with them," Kira said finally, using the rudimentary translator program. "Not as specimen." Jack nodded, his brow furrowed with the effort of forming a response the program could process. "Military follows rules. No exceptions." Then, after a pause, he added manually, "I sorry." Kira reached for his hand then, her silver-flecked fingers intertwining with his. The contact felt right, despite the physiological differences. "Is there another way?" she asked. Jack's eyes met hers, conflict evident in their depths. Then, with sudden resolution, he stood, pulling her gently to her feet. He led her to the station's navigation console, activating a display of the surrounding star systems. With careful movements, he indicated a route away from Frost Point toward a marker labeled in human script. "Trading station," he explained through the translator. "Neutral territory. Many species. Safe for you." Kira understood immediately. Jack was considering direct disobedience of his orders, helping her escape rather than delivering her to his superiors. For a human in military service, such an action would have serious consequences. "Why would you risk this?" she asked. Jack struggled with the translator, finally abandoning it in favor of direct expression. He touched his chest, then hers, then brought their hands together between them. The gesture was primal, transcending language, connection, protection, something more. Kira moved closer, eliminating the space between them. "Yes," she said simply, knowing he would understand her meaning if not her word. Their first kiss was tentative, exploratory, an intimate first contact between worlds. Then it deepened, certainty replacing hesitation as they acknowledged what had been building between them since that first moment in the frozen wreckage of her ship. When they separated, Jack's decision was made. He moved with renewed purpose, gathering essential supplies while explaining his plan through a combination of the translator and their personal sign language. They would take his scout vessel, which had enough range to reach the trading station if they were careful with fuel. From there, Kira could either seek passage to Lyrian territory or wait while Jack attempted to negotiate with his command from a position of safety. As they prepared through the night, integrating components from Kira's damaged craft to optimize Jack's vessel, there was a new dimension to their collaboration. Touches that lingered, glances that promised more when danger was behind them. What had begun as rescue had evolved into something neither of them had anticipated, something that defied both their species' expectations. Dawn on Frost Point brought crystalline clarity to the ice plains surrounding the research station. They worked quickly, loading the scout vessel with their modified equipment and essential supplies. Fluff, sensing the urgency, remained unusually cooperative in his carrying pack. Jack made one final transmission to his command, a carefully worded status update that revealed nothing of their plans while buying them additional time. Then, with a decisive motion, he disabled the station's tracking system. They launched as Frostpoint's primary sun crested the horizon, the scout vessel climbing rapidly through the turbulent atmosphere. Jack's piloting was precise, following a trajectory that minimized their energy signature against the planet's magnetic field. In orbit, he activated the vessel's stealth protocols, technology not included in standard Guild intelligence reports on human capabilities. Kira noted this with professional interest, even as she calibrated the navigation system for their journey to the trading station. The first challenge came sooner than expected. As they cleared Frostpoint's outermost moon, sensors detected a larger vessel entering the system, the military extraction team, arriving ahead of schedule. Jack immediately altered course, using the moon's gravity to accelerate while shielding them from direct detection. A tense game of interstellar cat-and-mouse ensued. The military vessel, clearly alerted to potential irregularities by Jack's last transmission, began a systematic search pattern. Jack piloted with extraordinary skill, using Frostpoint's triple moons and volatile radiation belts to mask their trajectory. Kira contributed her own expertise, recalibrating the engines to minimize thermal signatures and suggesting course adjustments based on Lyrian stealth protocols. Together, they managed to evade the search until they reached the system's edge, where Jack executed a precisely calculated jump to hyperspace. The relief was palpable as the stars stretched around them, Frostpoint and its pursuing vessel left behind. In the quiet aftermath, they allowed themselves a moment of celebration, embracing in the cockpit, the physical contact affirming their shared triumph and deepening connection. The journey to the trading station would take nearly 3 standard days at their current speed. 3 days in close quarters, with the immediate danger behind them, but future uncertainties still ahead. They established a rotation for pilot duty, allowing each time to rest while the other monitored their course. During these hours, they continued to bridge the gaps in their understanding. Jack teaching Kira simple phrases in his language, Kira sharing elements of Lyrian culture through holographic displays and music from her personal recorder. Fluff adjusted to the microgravity with typical adaptability, discovering that he could propel himself from wall to wall with controlled pushes of his powerful hind legs. Their physical relationship evolved naturally within the confines of the small vessel. What began as cautious exploration of their differences became a celebration of them. Silver-flecked skin against tanned human flesh, the contrast beautiful in its diversity. They discovered compatibility where none had been documented, intimacy that transcended biological classification. In the quiet hours of artificial night, as Jack slept beside her, Kira reflected on the improbability of it all. The chances of their meeting had been astronomically small, the likelihood of mutual understanding even smaller. Yet here they were, defying statistical probability and cultural expectations alike. On the 3rd day, they detected the trading station, a massive structure consisting of interconnected modules orbiting a small, resource-rich planetoid. The station was known to Lyrians as a neutral zone, where various species conducted commerce outside the formal diplomatic channels of their respective governments. Jack approached with caution, using commercial identification codes rather than his military designation. The station's automated systems processed their arrival, assigning them a docking port in a section designated for small vessels. As they secured the scout craft, Jack used the translator to explain the situation. The trading station maintained a strict policy of neutrality, refusing to extradite visitors without formal diplomatic procedures that Jack's command would be reluctant to initiate given the politically sensitive nature of unauthorized first contact. They would be safe here, at least temporarily. Jack would need to explain his actions to his superiors eventually, but from a position where Kira could not simply be seized as an unidentified entity. They entered the station together, Fluff secure in his carrying pack, but alert, his azure eyes taking in the extraordinary diversity of the trading hub. Beings from dozens of systems moved through the broad concourses, some recognizable to Kira from guild records, others entirely new to her. Jack maintained a protective stance beside her, clearly uncomfortable in this unfamiliar environment, but determined to ensure her safety. They established temporary quarters in a section catering to a variety of atmospheric preferences, using Jack's credit account to secure accommodations. It was in the station's central communications hub that the next surprise awaited them. Kira, accessing the system to attempt contact with the Exploration Guild, discovered a priority alert with her identification code. The Guild had been searching for her since her disappearance, dispatching rescue vessels to her last known coordinates. More astonishingly, one such vessel was currently docked at the trading station, a Lyrian diplomatic craft that had stopped to refuel during its search pattern. Her family, it seemed, had leveraged considerable influence to include a family representative in the rescue mission. The reunion with Inera, her maternal sibling, was overwhelming. Lyrians were not known for public emotional displays, but Inera embraced Kira in the human style Jack had taught her, whispers of relief flowing in their native language. Jack stood awkwardly aside until Kira reached for his hand, drawing him into the circle of introduction. "This is Jack," she explained in Lyrian, then switched to the human phrases she had learned. "He saved my life. Twice." Inera studied Jack with the analytical precision typical of their species, taking in his military attire and the protective way he positioned himself beside Kira. "You brought a human back with you," Inera observed, switching to the intergalactic standard language that Jack's translator could partially process. "The Guild will have questions. I'll answer them," Kira replied firmly. "But first, Jack needs asylum. His military will punish him for helping me escape." Inera's expression shifted to one Kira recognized from childhood, calculating, evaluating options. "The diplomatic vessel has certain protections," Inera said finally. "If he comes as your chosen companion, they cannot touch him without violating interspecies protocols." "Chosen companion?" Jack asked through his translator, the nuance clearly lost in conversion. Kira hesitated, seeking the right human equivalent. "In my culture, it means family. By choice, not birth." Understanding dawned in Jack's eyes, followed by something deeper. He nodded slowly. "Yes," he said simply. "I choose." The following days were a whirlwind of diplomatic procedures and personal adjustments. The Lyrian vessel established formal communication with Earth's military command, negotiating terms that would allow Jack's reassignment to joint species diplomatic service rather than court-martial for desertion. Lyrian authorities, while surprised by the unauthorized contact, recognized the potential benefits of a direct line to human military operations. Jack's intimate knowledge of Earth's expansion strategies was valuable enough to overlook the unorthodox circumstances of his introduction to Lyrian society. For Kira and Jack, however, the political maneuvering was secondary to their deepening personal connection. Each day brought new discoveries. Shared meals, introducing each to the culinary traditions of the other's world. Quiet hours exchanging stories that the translators now rendered with increasing accuracy. Nights exploring the physical expression of emotions that required no translation at all. Fluff, ever adaptable, became an unexpected diplomatic asset. The creature's affectionate nature and obvious bond with both Kira and Jack served as living proof that connection between their species was possible on the most fundamental level. As arrangements were finalized for their departure to Lyrian space, Jack and Kira stood in the observation deck of the diplomatic vessel, watching as the trading station receded behind them. The path ahead was uncertain. Jack would be the first human to live openly in Lyrian society, a position that would bring both opportunities and challenges. "Are you afraid?" Kira asked, using his language now with growing fluency. Jack considered the question with characteristic thoughtfulness. "Yes," he admitted finally, "but not of going, of missing what might be." Kira understood. For both of them, this journey represented a departure from everything familiar, a leap into uncharted territory more profound than any physical exploration. Yet the alternative, separation, return to their isolated existence before Frostpoint, was unthinkable now. "In Lyrian tradition," she said, taking his hands in hers, "there is a ceremony for those who choose to be family. Not like human marriage, she added, seeing his expression. More. Recognition that our paths are joined, however they may wend. Jack smiled, the expression warming his weathered features. On Earth, we might say, where you go, I will go. Yes, Kira replied. That is the essence. Fluff chirped from his perch nearby, as if adding his endorsement to the arrangement. As the diplomatic vessel accelerated toward Lyrian space, initiating the jump sequence that would carry them across the stars, Kira reflected on the extraordinary chain of events that had led to this moment. A crash on a frozen planet, the improbable arrival of a rescuer from another world, a connection that defied probability and prejudice alike. In the vast, indifferent expanse of space, they had found each other. Whatever challenges awaited in their shared future, that impossible beginning would remain their foundation. A reminder that the universe, for all its coldness, sometimes granted unexpected warmth to those prepared to embrace it.